Coming up on this Big Gay Fiction Fest episode, we go back in time as we present a panel on historical romances.
Welcome to episode 383 of the Big Gay Fiction Podcast, the show for avid readers and passionate fans of gay romance fiction. I'm Will, and with me, as always, is my co-host and husband, Jeff.
Hello, Rainbow Romance reader. Welcome back to the Big Gay Fiction Fest. Historical romance seems like it is everywhere these days. It's on TV with Bridgerton, there's historical drama like The Gilded Age, Downton Abbey is back in movie theaters, and while only The Gilded Age has given us queer characters on TV, there are plenty of great gay historical romances to pick from, and we've got three terrific authors with us to talk about writing about the past. Annabelle Greene, Marion, Farmer, and Cat Sebastian each have new books that we're going to talk about, plus we're going to discuss many aspects of the genre and why they write in it. Mary and Annabelle and Cat, thank you so much for joining us for the Big Gay Fiction Fest. It's great to have you here to talk about historicals.
Thanks for having me.
Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you. It's lovely to be here.
So I'm going to start off and have you each introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about the type of historicals that you write. And Annabelle, we'll kick it off with you.
Oh, will you? Okay. Great.
Your first name starts with A. It seemed like a good place to start.
Yeah, no, sadly, that does make total sense. So if you see me looking down, I've made worryingly extensive notes for this casual conversation. So we'll see how it goes. I'm Annabelle. I live in southern Italy in a tiny flat with my boyfriend and a cat that really hates me. And this is my first ever panel, so I'm a little bit nervous. I've just finished my first historical series, The Society of Beasts, which is 3 gay romances set in and around a fictional club for gay gentlemen in Regency, England. So the third one, The Servant and the Gentleman, will be coming out on the 17th of May. And then, who knows, the world, I don't know yet.
And Cat.
Sure. I am Cat Sebastian, and I write queer historical romance in a variety of settings. And it usually tends to be pretty soft. And I guess that's like at this point, I guess that's the only unifying factor that my books have. I used to be able to say I write Regency historical romance, but now it's all over the place. But the unifying factors are that the characters are always queer and usually is pretty low angst.
And I love how you've expanded on the historicalness of it, because it did, like you said, all used to be Regency, but now you're in the 40s and the 60s. And I mean, historical these days, I guess, is almost anything pre-2000, which makes me feel super old. But
Yes.
And Mary, tell us about you.
I'm Mary Farmer. I write mostly Victorian, but every once in a while somebody drags me into a Regency project, romance. I just love writing deep love stories of just people falling in love, but also from my background of history, because I have 2 degrees in history and all this information in my head, and I love to get that out into story form. So I try to base stuff on something interesting I read in a history book and then make a story out of it. I guess that's my unifying factor there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a unifying factor for my books so far, because I am nothing compared to you guys in terms of output yet, she says, but like, I don't know, bonkers passion, I guess, would probably be a way of putting it.
I like bonkers passion. What more could I want in a book other than bonkers passion, where the two come together so well?
Actually, I'll just go and change some social stuff. Yeah, that's a good idea.
I'm curious to know what kind of drew you into writing in the period, or in Kat's case, periods that you are writing in. I guess, Mary, we'll just come back to you for that.
Well, like I say, I have all these degrees in history, and I read history books for fun. And I think the reason why the 1890s in particular really appeals to me, my first fully series, The Brotherhood, was Victorian London in the 1890s. And the current series that I'm doing, The Slippery Slope, is like a spin-off of that in New York City in the 1890s. And the reason the 1890s just really resonate with me is like they were at the time known as the naughty 90s. And it's just a lot more forward thinking and a lot more progressive and liberal than a lot of people nowadays assume that life was back then. But think about how much things were changing back then. The inventions, electricity in homes and running water, and the media and the press was a huge, new, exciting, horrible thing. And it just feels a lot like what we're dealing with now. So I love the similarities of that time period and what we're doing now. And it's just educating people about the fact that it was actually way more liberal than you think it was is so much fun.
Is that era when you have your degrees from, or are your degrees kind of more far-reaching through history?
I sort of specialized in the entire 19th century, but the more I studied and the more I read, the more the what in England they call the late Victorian period, and over in the States the Gilded Age, just started to appeal to me more and more. And post earning my degrees, I've actually bought and read more books about that particular time period, and up to World War I, because that first decade of the 20th century kind of fits with the 19th century in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. That World War I changed so many things. Mm-hmm. That's understated several centuries.
Annabelle, what drew you to Regency?
Well, I wish I had a greater response as that. It was completely unearned confidence in my knowledge of the period. Like I'm English, and period dramas are baked into our pop culture, like in such a huge way. You know, the Pride and Prejudice with Colin Firth as Mr. Darcy. Like, I always loved that. I also have a degree in history, but it was early modern. And while I would absolutely love to, like, you know, write a romance about a sort of 17th century ballad seller or something similar, what I found in terms of like keystone romance texts when I was beginning to read romance was Regency. And I adored it. I absolutely loved it. And because my natural writing voice is historical rather than contemporary, I don't know, it must have been the books I read growing up, I thought, you know what, I could write a Regency. I actually get, and then I started writing and I thought, oh God, I know nothing. Like, I am completely unqualified. Like, I think I can write, but boy, I underestimated this massively. And so then I did proper research, and I also started thinking again about the things that you love in an uncomplicated way when you're a teenager, like Jane Austen. You think, well, it's a really staid, white, sort of only one class strata type of, you know, exploration. I would like to see what other people were doing in that period and how other people found love and happiness. And so that was what kind of drove me on to start writing in Regency. And I'm sorry, Kat, this may be embarrassing, but it was reading one of your books as well. Like, you only know you can do something if you know it exists. And so mm-hmm. I think it was the Lawrence Brown affair. Like, I read it and I was like, oh my God, it exists. I could do this. This is amazing.
For me, I would building off what Annabelle said, like I had read so much Regency romance. Like starting in like 2009, when my younger kids were born, I was just like in a bad place, and all I could do was read romance novels. Like, that was it. Okay. So I just I went through, I didn't even have an e-reader. So I just went through every single historical romance on my library shelf. And they were basically all Regency. Like, I went through like all of the Julia Quinn's, like all of everybody, you know, there was nothing left when I was done. And then I had to buy an e-reader and read everything else. And like, honestly, after 3 years of this, like, that's about when it occurred to me. Like, after like 300 romance novels, I was like, wait a minute, like, these are all straight people. Like, it's actually pretty weird for me as me to be like reading about all of these straight people. And then like, once that idea got into my head, I was like, okay, like, there's gotta be, like, I'm not the first person to have thought of this, but like, at the time, there absolutely were queer historical romances, but it was like there were enough to keep you busy for 2 weeks, right? And at this point, I'm still mad, right? I'm like, where are my gay books? And so was like, the solution clearly, right? The solution clearly is that I have to write one, you know?
Yeah.
And I had never written a book. I had never written anything more complicated than like a legal brief or like, or an email. Okay. And so,
those famously uncomplicated legal briefs.
I know, I was thinking the same
like a
thing.
shopping list. Jesus Christ.
I mean, they're not really sexy though. Okay. Like they're not.
Yes, it depends on the case.
Yeah, I guess.
they're not fun to read. And so I had no reason to believe that I could actually write something. And I was like, I just did it and it worked out. And so I kept doing it. And it was like, it really was just wanting to see like these books that I enjoyed so much, like the setting that I enjoyed so much. Like I wanted to see it filled up with people like me. And that was like enough to propel me through 10 books. And then I was like, wait, there are other settings that are like absolutely devoid of it. Like, you know, my mind is working like in a 10-year lag at this point, right? Like it occurs to me like in like 2020 that there aren't, that like, wait a minute, like we haven't done, like there aren't any like good, decent, happy queer people in Agatha Christie. I have to get on that, you know? But that's pretty much like, that's how I got here.
Is that not seeing queer people in Agatha Christie type mysteries and through the other things kind of what led you into taking on other time frames after doing so much in Regency?
Yeah, I mean, that's totally it. Like it's a part of it is I had read, I mean, like, okay, like all the love and respect for people who can write 50 books in one period, but like my brain is like too squiggly to stick with one thing for it's a miracle I wrote 10 books in one period. It's a miracle I wrote 10 books at all. Okay. So after like I really started to chafe at it. And then I pitched a book that wasn't Regency and was basically told like, no, it's kind of got to be Regency. And then of course I'm like, now I'm in a place where I can't write a Regency novel, right? You know, like I've been told I have to, and now I'm in a dark place. And so I managed to talk my editor back to as far back as like 1750, you know, and that's sufficiently different from Regency. And that is like, everything is much looser, you know? So I got that far back. And then I was like, I really like, you know what, like I'm personally annoyed by the lack of like happy queer texts in the 20th century. And again, like, okay, like I guess I'm the person for the job, you know, and like, which is so embarrassing to admit because like I can usually maintain that level of confidence for like a minute, you know, but like to be able to sustain it for, you know, 100,000 words is like embarrassing. But
this is the writer disease, isn't it? The kind of the belief that you are essentially unqualified for everything apart from this one thing where you are the best person on the planet. You just have to sustain that for a book and then for another book.
Can I ask like an embarrassing question? Like, did you self-publish the ones from the 60s and the 40s?
Yeah, I did.
This is like I've only been indie. I've gone with a publisher for these last couple of books, but like I'm an indie at heart because I have found that we have the ability to do more and explore more and look at all of these subjects that like traditional publishing doesn't like to take risks. I totally get that, you know, do what you know is going to work. But we have so much more freedom when we can publish it ourselves. That's kind of why I started publishing just period in the first place. I tried going the traditional route and I was like, and then I learned about indie publishing like that gives me the freedom that I want to tell the stories that nobody else is telling.
Yes. And you have one set in like your most recent book that's set in like the Bowery, New York. Yeah.
Oh,
I love that. I mean, that's such a great setting.
Well, and the thing is, and okay, I'm getting up on my soapbox now, but I've done a lot of research about the gay club scene of the 1890s. And then when I put up my first ad on Facebook, I had somebody right away go and quote like, the gay club scene in the 1890s, really? And I'm like, it's a thing. It actually existed, and it's fascinating, the history. And my author's notes are as fun to write as the books themselves, because I'm just basically, this is like following what actually happened in New York.
It's
but again,
the slide, right? Are you basing it on the slide?
Well, the slide is actually, I've got two rival clubs in this book,
Okay.
the slide and the slippery slope, which is a made up one. But I'm at the point historically where the slide was raided and shut down. Spoiler alert, that happens in the third book in this series, which is a Romeo and Juliet story between the bartender of the one and the bartender of the other. But yeah.
Scandalous.
I know. But just bringing the actual history, again, I don't think if I pitched this idea to an editor, I'm not sure if they would have gone for it, but there's so much material there and there's so much that can be done with it. And then I already have an idea for a spinoff of the spinoff that takes what gay life in New York was like even further, because the source material is just there.
I have a similar weird fixation about the 1930s right now. Like,
Yeah.
because everyone thinks about the Second World War, and I get it, the big area, but the 30s was interesting. It was full of this stuff. And like, yeah, the London gay scene was amazing. And then people act like it didn't exist. And I'm just like, it did, but you can't converse for hours about that.
Well, and that's the thing that made me like gasp so loud. You probably heard me gasp over in Italy when I discovered it, that because there was a deliberate effort on the part of mid 20th century historians to bury all of gay history. And they succeeded. They succeeded to the point where a lot of my gay readers don't know what their own history is because it was so successful. And it's just like, I'm so glad that historians are actually correcting these errors now. But that's, I think, why I'm so passionate about writing this right now, because it's there. It happened.
I remember a similar experience with my degree, actually. I did the history of gender was one of my modules. And I remember there was a whole section in the library, like queering history. And I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. People are actually doing it. No, it was amazing.
That's funny, because the most interesting class I took in getting my history degrees was historiography, which is a study of how history has been recorded and the biases that historians have had throughout time. Fascinating stuff.
Sounds it.
Oh, yeah.
I want to come back to something that you said, Annabelle. You said that your writing voice was more Regency than contemporary.
Yeah.
Tell me what that means, because I'm fascinated by that idea.
Well, I think it's because again, like we say more Regency than contemporary. We could just say not contemporary to be more exact. Like, because I grew up and I read everything. I was an obsessive reader, and my parents, rather than sort of spend thousands on, whatever book was out there, I read a lot of like things like The Phoenix and the Carpet, or Five Children in It, or The Railway Children, and like a lot of children's classics, which then sort of I kept reading those, and a lot of Roald Dahl as well, who was sort of a complicated man, definitely, but but an interesting writer for children. And then I moved to Italy on my own, and I just wanted to spend all my spare time reading, and I had a Kindle, and I just got all the free historical books there were. So I read a lot of 30s books, a lot of 40s books, a glut of Agatha Christie like just amazing. Like, and I think my writing voice, when I sort of get onto the page, it just comes out as not quite of the day. And I think maybe my speech might be the same, but that's just, I don't know how your writing voice is exactly developed, but for me, I think it's an accumulation of all of the books that I've read and all of the books that were important to me as well, which I think, for example, Cider with Rosie by Laurie Lee. Like, if you guys have read that, like the writing style is really weird, but oh my God, it sticks in your brain like massively. And it's very flowery and it's full of adverbs and like interesting metaphors and similes. So like, I'm not a clear, sparse writer. I don't know. That's just how it's come out for me. I don't know about you guys. Like, I'd love to know how you guys think about your voice.
I would have said, like, I definitely, like, until recently, I would have said I only had a historical voice, like, and it's probably for the same reason. I hadn't really thought about why, but it has to be for what you're saying. It's like that I was steeped in historical fiction growing up, and I was an English major, and my concentration was like the long 18th century, and so like there you go, right? And the adverb situation and all of that, but like for my 60s books, I do rein it in. You know what I mean? Like I do, but it's like a conscious thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's because you're not gonna. I mean, like you can't do like florid prose in the 60s. That's like it's ridiculous. So like, and that's I would say that I'm probably aiming for a contemporary voice, and I think it works, but I don't think I could have done it 10 years ago. Right. Like it's taken I think I had to get more comfortable with like what I'm capable of, and more confident in what I'm capable of, and that it's not, and I don't have, and that like voice can be a fluid thing.
Oh yeah. Well, I've noticed that when I'm writing Regency books versus when I'm writing the Victorian era ones, they actually have a slightly different voice. And then as I've been writing the ones set in New York City, I'm actually noticing that my voice is changing slightly again, because I spent an entire day looking up slang terms of New York City in the 1890s, and there are a lot of them. and then trying to incorporate those, they just have a different rhythm to them. So it changes based on the location of where I'm writing.
Weirdly, that connects into one of the, I think we've got a research question coming later, but one of the small but really annoying things for me with writing Regency is like what slang terms were technically correct but sound weird in a modern book.
Oh, yeah.
So you're like, oh well, he would say that, but I can't make him say that. That's just not going to work.
Or slang terms that were completely historically accurate for the time period, but people think are modern.
Yes.
And they will ding you if you try to put them in there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm always tempted to include like an author's note about that kind of thing, but it would literally be just like a list of synonyms for boner. Like, that can't be your author's note.
No, I did. My author's note would just be like, just look it up, guys. Okay, I did a lot of research. I promise.
Professional here.
Yeah.
I looked it up, so you could look it up too.
That was going to be my answer to one of the other questions later on about things that are difficult about writing historicals. Is that it's there's a constant battle that goes on between being historically accurate and then writing things that readers assume are historically accurate. Yep. I had a very interesting conversation with some of the MF historical romance author friends that I have about how the current MF historical romance Regency genre is actually Jane Austen and Georgia Hare fan fiction, not historically accurate.
Yeah.
So if you're not writing canon to the fan fiction world, readers will be upset. So it's a fine line to walk. And then I've had, because my background is in MF historical romance, I've had readers that were like, yeah, but two men could never have had a romance back then because it's not historically accurate. I'm like, you're wrong, but it's a very fine line to walk to prove to you that you're wrong.
This is my biggest peeve, and I end up getting angry with because you shouldn't get angry about it. It's ignorance. It's not malice, 99% of the time. But I'm still just like, it's such a lack of imagination to feel like, oh, well, these people would never have been happy. They never would have sought love and managed to live and enjoyed themselves. You're like, they never would have formed lasting relationships or even just had a great time having sex with who they wanted. Never would have happened. It's like, that's such small thinking. Like, come on.
Yeah,
it just makes me want to bring up all those actual historical people who very much got away with it. My current favorite is General von Steuben from the American Revolution, who walked around American Valley Forge with his teenage lovers that he ended up bequeathing his entire fortune to. The man was hysterical, and everyone wanted to invite him to all the revolutionary parties.
And there were more than one. There were 3 or 4 generals in the Revolutionary War that were openly, they were about as out as you can get. Walking around with your boyfriends, plural, is
Well, and I live in the Philadelphia area, and nearby to me is the town of King of Prussia, which is named after Frederick the Great, who was very, very openly gay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no,
I
it
think
didn't exist back then.
No, everyone suffered all the time. That was it. No joy.
Because people are famously good at not having sex they're not supposed to have.
Definitely. Yes.
I think it was you, Mary, who mentioned, of course, that, history's changed so much. And for all of the marginalized communities, the history can be very difficult to find because it was kind of just put away, whether it's queer history or history for persons of color or indigenous people. It's just all like, but there was something I heard, and I wish I could remember who said it, but it was in like a historical panel or somewhere, that it's like, even when oppressed, people find ways to be happy.
Oh, yeah.
People find their love. People find ways to be happy. And that's one of the things I love seeing. I know this history existed for sure, but I like seeing the ways that it comes through and the ways that you could see in the stories where people are appropriately careful where they need to be, or, appropriately taking caution, but also finding the love. And it was Lawrence Brown affair. I mean, I'd read many of your books, Kat, ahead of that, but that you brought a little bit of class difference in that, but also, mixed race relationship to it. And it's like, all of that could have happened. And the way you structured it made me feel like it was also accurate to the way that it could have happened. All of this comes back to where my question actually sits, is that finding that balance of historical accuracy and, the story that people expect to read, the most challenging part of historical, or would you lay that kind of challenging part somewhere else?
For me, that was really challenging at first because I expected a lot of resistance. Okay. Like I was like really, really conscious of the fact that I had an audience that wasn't used to reading this. Right. And because again, this is like my first book came out in 2016. It really was a different landscape. And so I was really like, I paid a lot of attention to making it plausible. And in one of my books, I did include an author's note, proving that it was plausible or whatever. And since then, I don't. Okay, I write the story, and if someone doesn't like the story, they can not like the story, right? It's because, and that's part of that is just that I'm confident that I have a reader base that is educated and aware, and I'm super fortunate about that. But part of it is also that I'm pissed off, right? I don't want to have to justify it. I know this, and if I don't want to be in a position of being actually we were always here constantly, every single book, every single interaction, right? That's, you guys know that's exhausting. Yeah, that's all.
I know what you said exactly, but I've gotten to the point now where I think that readership has changed a lot in the last 5-10 years, because I was really concerned about those exact same things at first and got defensive about things. And now I'm just like, you know what? You're going to read it. You're going to read it. If you're not, you're not. And if you're going to believe it, that's great. If not, it's not my problem.
Yep.
But at the same time, I've had because again, I come from this background of MF. When I had this woman who is in her 60s email me to say, reading your books, I was really nervous about doing it at first because it's not what I usually read. But I understand, and it has helped improve my relationship with my gay grandson. I was like, oh, yeah. She's like, I understand him much better now. And I'm like, okay.
That's like a beautiful golden email to receive.
I think I printed it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think, am I the newest writing in this space? Something that I found interesting and also challenging as a new author and writing in this sphere is that fortunately, the readership now is much more knowledgeable and much more informed. And it's not expecting a certain type of narrative of queer suffering. It's that they're expecting certain tropes that you need to hit and certain beats. And I was like, oh my God, this, the fan base is incredible. And, you're never going to get it all, but it's still amazing to just see a readership grow up that's no, these are the things we want. And it's okay.
the fine line that I'm walking is there are two buckets of readers. There's readers who read historical romance and are willing to read a gay romance, and there are readers who read gay romance who are willing to take a chance on historical, and they're very different, and they have massively different expectations, and trying to bridge those has been a challenge. That's
yeah, no, that is like, I would say like I've been wondering about that since the get-go, because the readers for my MF books tend to be the exact same readers for my MM books. Like, and I hadn't expected that at all, right? Like I was expecting like traditional like Regency romance readers to go in for the MF books, and it wasn't them at all. And when they and that's also, those are the books I've gotten the weirder elements of pushback about from readers. Like, you know, like usually people just keep their weird bad opinions to themselves or reviews, and like, that's great, more power to you. But like, those are the ones where the readers reach out, you know, like, and you get the email about how like women didn't act like that, and you just want to be like I don't know, okay, delete, like, I'm definitely not responding to you, because like that's going to wind up on Reddit, but you know, like, but like, that's like, I didn't expect that. Like, that is the biggest shock that I've had, is that like when I write an MF book, those are the ones where people like also leave like really weird like criticism of the female main character, you know, like, yeah, like, and that always makes me feel like just filthy about it, you know.
There is a small strange subset of the readership that I'm not particularly comfortable with, like in sort of that kind of weird bad opinion that you were talking about. Like, but I mean, again, like, you know, as a new author writing queer historicals, like, the pushback in general is weird, like, to learn how to deal with. And also, like, half of the time, you know, it's correct. Like, you know, the ones that actually give you proper criticism of your book, and you read it and you're like, nope, you are completely correct. Thank you for buying it. Please love the imperfect thing I made. Like,
those are the emails. I love those emails where it's like, actually, I totally agree. You know, like, the denouement is pretty bad here.
Like, oh, pacing all over the place. Like, you're completely correct.
Plot common. We should be friends.
Yeah, do you want to be my beta reader? Like, it's very much that kind of vibe.
But have you guys noticed that readers have gotten, shall we say, much more bold about reaching out when they dislike something? Because I've had a couple of doozies lately where they went out of their way to find my email address to send me a long email. And one of them, the title of the email is FYI, why I will never read your books. From somebody who has never read my books, but took the time to find my email address and send me this big long thing about the fact that, wait for it, my cover models look too young. Therefore, she will never read my books. But it's just this, well, this is probably not the forum for it, but have you guys noticed that readers have gotten very expressive?
Wow.
Well, I haven't had an expressive reader problem, because again, I'm just bad at existing in public. I don't even have a website or mailing list at this point. I mean, I'm sure, you know, once I'm better tooled up, I will have this. But I mean, like, my mental health is fragile on the best of days. I just, you know, I don't go on Goodreads. Like, that invites polarizing, terrible reviews of your book. And I went on there for my first one, and it wasn't the 1-star reviews that really, really got me. It was the 3-star reviews that, as I said, were correct. Like, so you read that, and you're like, oh boy, yep, okay, I guess that is a B+ book for you, and maybe that's what it is. Like, but in terms of expressive readers, no, I avoid the forums where readers express themselves, because again, it's not my place. Like, if you want to lavishly hate on my book, have at it, but don't write me an email. What?
I get one weird email a book is pretty much, at this point, it's one weird email a book. I know it's going to happen. And I almost it's such a rhythm by now that I know exactly what I'm going to do about it. Like, I will, you know, like, I screenshot the whole thing. I send it to my beta reader, you know, and then we laugh and laugh and laugh. And like, and then it's over, you know what I mean? Because I've gotten it off my chest. But at the beginning, like, my first book or two, again, 2016, weird times, I know there was a lot on Facebook, and I wound up like with like a Pavlovian like panic whenever I logged into Facebook, and that's why I'm not there anymore, you know. But Avon actually was awesome about it. Like Avon, like the Avon people went in, and wherever bad things were happening, like, you know, outright homophobic, gross things were happening, they went and they were able to like delete things and shut it down. And like that was I no way had the like there was no way that I had the spoons to deal with that at all. I would have been like, I retire, like we're out, you know, no more
like that's really good. Like that's a really good response on that part, I think.
Yeah.
That's also why it's important to have your author friends, so you can screenshot it and send them in. It's like, hello to this person.
What the hell is this?
And it's such the minority view. You know what I mean? Like overwhelmingly, the only stuff I'm ever going to hear about my books is like super positive, and like I'm so grateful about that. You know, so when somebody goes to like when someone takes the extra effort to make me sad, that's like, you know, that's, I think what gets me, right, is that you went out of your way to make me sad. Like, who am I to you? You don't even know me. You know, like you could have just not done that for $0. You could have just chosen not to do that. Like, what a weird hobby.
At that point, I don't know, I am maybe too good at just looking at that and being like, that seems like a you problem. That seems like a whole load of you problems that you're trying to make my problem, but it really remains a you problem in the end. Like, what can I do?
And the flip side of that is that's why the really supportive super fan readers are just,
oh my God,
so wonderful.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think readers understand how much like a positive comment on Twitter or a little message saying I love you, like it makes your day.
Oh, totally.
Like if anyone is ever end up being like, oh, but you know, they probably have loads of people, it's much less than you think, I think. Like, it's really, really good when people reach out.
Well, that's I have started putting them in my books. So again, when you get to the third book in the Slippery Slope series, Ricky, the bartender at the slide, is one of my fans. I started up and making him one of the heroes of my books. As he started out on Twitter, he started like just interacting with me, and then he just got so, I love Ricky. He lives in New York. I need to go up and visit him. But like, I just flat out made him one of the heroes of this coming up book. So he changed his profile name to the character because he's already been a secondary character in a book. You know, he changed his place of employment to the slide. So
that's so amazing.
I want to ask, since we looked at a little bit of the challenging side of writing historicals, what do you each find the funnest part to be? And Kat, we'll come over to you to start that one.
One thing I like especially about writing, like, you know, 17 and 1800s historical fiction is that you can like lean into a kind of like vanity and silliness and archness that doesn't really feel the same as if you were to set it in the present day, right? You can have a character who spends 3 hours in front of his mirror, you know, and like really thinks about like the state of his nails, and is like, I don't know if this waistcoat is the right shade of blue. You know what I mean? Like, and that you can do that in a way that's like so silly, and that I don't think it would have you can do it in the present day, obviously, but it's going to have a very different effect. And I really like that. And there's a certain kind of just wry humor that I think you can get away with in the historical voice, like Annabelle was saying, that I don't think it just doesn't hit the same in a contemporary. Those are my favorites.
Sorry, at a tiny point, it is weird how fun it is writing about clothes or just cloth. Like, I don't think people realize how much like you get a kick out of like describing someone's shirt or something like that. Like, it's a real like, oh, everything's just so nice. Like,
I have to rein it in so much. Like, you know what I mean? Like, once you hit the half page mark, you're like, you know what? Like, this might not be character development anymore. Like, I think we're gonna have to tighten that up. Like, stop with the lace cuffs, you know?
Well, to me, like the whole historical setting, it's almost like world building for science fiction or fantasy, because it's not a world that we live in. So you get to paint the picture of the whole world that people are in. I love world building.
I think the parallel with science fiction and fantasy, I think, is like really apt. And I think that historical romance sort of scratches the same itch as as because it's, you know, like you can write about you have this setting that's like one step removed from actual reality, and so you can explore character and theme in a way that, you know, you can do it with a little more freedom than you could in the present day, because you're not actually talking about the thing that matters here. You're talking about it more abstractly.
The sort of, it sort of does stray close to fantasy, and also like thinking about what you leave out and what you put in, and it's sort of, it's interesting the things that we choose to leave out, you know, because everyone talks about like bad teeth and syphilis and stuff like that, you know. Obviously, yes, it's not in the romance novel. There's just fun parallels, like, you know, sort of 18th century, 19th century books. A thing that always made me laugh, and sort of a wild tangent, you never know someone's pregnant until they have the baby. Like, there's never any reference to like being with child, like the physical, like it's just not put in. So in your fantasy historical playground, you're sort of putting in the posh curtains and the lovely dresses, possibly leaving out how those dresses were made and the immense human suffering that was like a part of the textiles industry, that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Historical's always been around in pop culture a little bit. I mean, certainly anytime there's a new, you know, Jane Austen miniseries, courtesy of the BBC, maybe a new movie happens. But I think trying to trace this back, at least in my little bit of research, you know, Downton Abbey seemed to really kick off a new wave of this that has certainly gotten even more with Bridgerton and the Gilded Age. What is it about historical, whether it's, you know, Regency where some of that set, or moving forward to like the Gilded Age that we see, you know, in the late 19th century? Why does this hit such a moment now and over the last couple of years? What do you think that is?
I actually, sort of adding to that question, is it historicals or is it historical posh people? Because
it's the fanciness.
It is fancy posh people, and it must be connected in some way to current events, because it always is. You know, there's a big kickoff reaction in culture to something that's happening in the world. But exactly, Kat, it's fancy posh people. And I mean, yeah, Downton Abbey, like, yes, you know, the servants have their storylines, but everyone's talking about Lady Mary. It's the kind of, you know, the dying aristocracy.
Well, that's, you know, the dying part, I think you just hit on it, because it's a nostalgia for a time period that, back in the golden age, when things were pretty and clean and wonderful. And it wasn't actually like that, but people want to believe that there was a time, you know, there was a dream that was Rome. And it's funny because, so again, from my MF background, I'm actually, by the end of this year, I'm leaving MF behind for a while and only doing MM, because I've grown frustrated with a lot of people who want to recapture a history that never existed. And it has just become frustrating of like, okay, but you're portraying something out of a sense of nostalgia and angst and wishing that we could return to a golden age, but it was never really like that, which then for me begs the question, so why is queer historical becoming so popular when it doesn't hit that same, there was a time when everything was fine and perfect and we didn't have to worry about the people of color and everybody was straight, and it was, you know, that's, to me, there's a whole other question in that question.
Yes. I think,
can we talk about that other question too, because that's almost far more interesting than the one that I asked.
Well, I mean, I think queer pop culture, I could be wrong, but queer pop culture in general is exploding. Like, you know, and it does make me laugh when, you know, people with, as Kat said, weird, bad opinions are like, oh, well, it's everywhere now. Yes, almost like real life. You know, like,
almost like it was always like this.
Yes, it's almost as if it has always been this way. But I think the reason all three of us write in queer historicals is because I just think it's amazing to discover joy, historical queer joy and love, and how you want to read everything about that. like, we've had all of these stories of pain and suffering, and they absolutely have their place in the wider canon, but come on, like, we need some happiness. Like, you know, a reminder that happiness existed alongside these terrible things. Like, I don't know, for me.
Yeah,
I think that it's instructive to look at our flag bean staff alongside like Bridgerton and Gilded Age and all of that, okay? Because you have this, not only is it queer, not only is it a rom-com, but it's like explicitly like brown, and like it's about, you know what I mean? Like you have like people of color, it's by people of color, right? Like, you know, and it's, so you have this worldview that is notably absent from what we typically think of as a period piece, you know? Like, yeah, like and it's not fancy, right? Like it's you know, it's also not rooted in like reality, right? So there's something else happening there that's like that I can't really like that does set it apart from like Bridgerton and Gilded Age, but like they aren't rooted in reality either. It's just a different kind of not being rooted in reality, you know? I feel like when people are talking about like, are we like, what is like, do people enjoy watching and like reading about like historical romance or whatever? I want people to look at our flag bean stuff, you know, like I think, because I feel like that's a model for like going ahead, right? It's like you take, like you start with like, anyway, I actually wasn't planning on bringing that conversation today back to our flag bean stuff, but like it's all I've been talking about for like almost like for like a month, and so sorry guys.
we almost believe you.
No, you're obviously passionate about it, and that's just gone on my TV. Oh
no, you really have to, like really like it's so whatever. I don't know what, I really have no idea what I paid for the HBO Max subscription, but it doesn't matter because it was worth it and I would do it again.
And coming back to something that Annabelle said, you keep throwing out these little things that I just lock onto.
Right.
I love that all of your stories deal with queer joy and love. The world's on fire enough now. I don't need to read about, you know, difficulties in the past. There's enough of those here. And that's one of the things I love about gay romance in general, is that I love seeing people like me, whether they're younger or older or whatever, all finding their HEA, and that it's not wrapped up, at least not in the books that I read, because I'll avoid those if there is, you know, any kind of like difficulty or overt homophobia or whatever that is. Like, I don't really need that. I want that joy. And that we see it in the historical setting, I think makes it all the better.
Well, the fact that you said that kind of, so I have several of my MF historical romance friends who've been like, I should write a gay historical romance because they're really popular right now. And I'm always like, before you do that, come talk to me, because tell me the plot for your book, because if you write this book about, oh, woe is us, we can't be together, our love is forbidden, you're going to run into problems with readers. And
like, I mean, I don't know, speaking from my perspective, like secrecy can be sexy, but shame for me is not. Like, I am just not interested. Like, and I, obviously these things vanish in the historical record. Mary Cat, you know better than me, but I refuse to believe that there wasn't like a gay guy in 1815 who catches the eye of someone across a sort of crowded pub or in a field or after a festival, and there's that little spark, and he thinks, oh, well, maybe not, we can sound this out, there will be ways of working out, like, you know, and then they chat and the spark, but like, you know, that journey is just so lovely and so important. And I mean, I have a secondary character in my third book, The Seven of the Gentleman, who has a brief brush with the law. Right? But it's, you know, I really tried. I mean, maybe I failed, but I really tried my best to make it very clear throughout that couple of scenes that he is not ashamed of who he is. Like, people think he should be. People have told him, you know, since forever that he should be ashamed, but he is absolutely not. Like, just, and as long as I've done that, as long as I've got characters that are like, you know what, I like being who I am and loving who I love, then you can kind of work out the rest. I don't know, what's it like for you two?
Oh, exactly what you said. Like, I would just co-sign that entire thing. Like, I mean, undoubtedly some people, I mean, like, when you're told by society that you ought to be ashamed for who you are, right? Like, obviously some people are going to internalize that, right?
Yes.
But
yes.
that doesn't need to be what I write about, right? Like, I'm right. I want to write about stories that are, you know, uplifting and warm and optimistic for the people who are reading them today. And so those are the stories that I'm going to choose. You know, and also, like, often that being ashamed of yourself thing often is like, that's not a permanent condition, right? Like, you know, like often you're there and you move on. So like, you can write about people who at the moment the story is taking place, like, you know, are you know, who don't feel that way, who are proud of who they are, right? And that can be a big deal for them, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to dig into some of the books. And Kat, we're going to kick this off with you because you have been moving around those historical periods like we talked about. You've got the Cabots, who are in the like late 50s, early 60s. You've got Page and Summers that are in the middle 1940s. Now you've got The Perfect Crime of Marion Hayes, which is Georgian London. Tell us a little bit about all this time hopping you've been doing and about these books and these series that you've got that are kind of all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is just like magpie brain, right? Like, I see, like, you know, as soon as I had the confidence to know that people would follow me out of the Regency, I ran for it. Like, with my first book that was not Regency, I self-published it with very little. I mean, there was no marketing. I was just like, here, I wrote a book, you know, and it did well. And so like, that was a lesson, right? Where if people will follow me outside of the Regency, I'm going to do that. And so I thought, okay, like, I can keep doing Regency with Avon, and then I can self-publish other, like, whatever random idea like crosses my mind, right? And that actually has worked super well because, like, I don't get bored with a voice, I don't get bored with a setting, I don't get bored with with any of it. And then last November for NaNoWriMo, like, I just happened to be in a place where I didn't have anything to do for November, okay? And so I just wrote a book that was set in 1959 in New York in a newspaper. Okay. And I knew it wasn't going to be one of my Cabot books, but I also knew that if Avon didn't want it, I could make it a Cabot book. Okay. And so I just wrote the book, you know, like, after being told, I don't know if this is a good idea, by like several people whose job it is to tell me that it's not a good idea.
I think we share an agent, Kat. I think that's her. Like, she's very good at that. Like, she knows her stuff.
She was so polite too. She was like, well, if you really want to do it, and I was just like, I'll do what you're telling me. I'm like, meanwhile, I'm on chapter 25 of this book, you know. And then I sort of just like presented it to her as like, so here's this book I wrote, and she didn't say a thing. She was, you know, and even like, she was great at it. And Avon wanted it. Okay. So that's like, and I was really surprised and really delighted because I think that I feel like it's great for me, but I think it's also good for like historical romance broadly.
Oh yeah.
I think it's super fun for readers and writers and everybody when we're looking beyond Regency England, you know. I think that like, especially since Regency England has become synonymous for like a large part of the audience with like a certain level of like fancy white people. And I think that opening up settings also opens it up to different voices. And I think that like especially there is like a sad lack of queer historical romance written by people of color. And like, if like because I was looking through, I update my like recommendation list every couple of months. That way I'm not just like always recommending this. And there's like, that is a notably like sad column, like, you know, like on that spreadsheet. And so
like, I want to know, where is Alyssa Cole's Netflix series?
Like,
where is that?
Literally any of her series, actually. Like, and she has,
do I write her a creepy letter? Do I write Netflix a creepy letter? Like, what do I need to do? Yeah.
But like, yeah, I guess like the short answer, long answer, that was a long answer. Okay. So like my coda to the long answer is just like, I am interested in a whole lot of things. And right now I feel like if I'm interested in something, I am confident I can make it interesting to enough readers for it to be worthwhile as a book. And so that's what I'm doing. And like the trick is just to stay interested for long enough to write more than one book. Like that way, it's not just like one random book, and then that way it's like at least a duology. So
isn't that just the story of how it goes? Can we stay interested long enough to finish the project?
Yes. Yeah.
Now, Mary, you've mentioned Slippery Slope a couple of times, and the first 2 books are already out. As we sit here in June. Tell us a little bit about this series, more than you already have, and what's coming up later in the series.
Well, again, I wanted to go for something a little bit different that people might not have seen, which is setting a historical series in New York City, because I've always been told, it has to be set in England or else nobody's going to read it. And I'm like, oh, really? You've told me I can't do something? Watch me. So, and as I've done research, particularly this amazing book by George Chauncey, Gay New York, which is that book has so much amazing information. I was just like, this needs to be brought into a series. And just exploring a different aspect of queer history that people might not know about. Not that they know much about it at all anyhow. And then, like I say, and this is funny though, because I'm trying to, can I sustain my interest in this idea? Because the Brotherhood was 10 books, and that actually got a little bit long for me. So there's like 4 books planned for the Slippery Slope, but then this idea hit me, and I'm almost embarrassed to talk about it because it'll take place in the same place, still in the Bowery in New York in the same time with the Slippery Slope in the background. But I had this idea for 5 guys who come from various different aspects of life in New York City who decide to put together a business making over gentlemen who wish to rise themselves up in the social scene of New York City. And one of them is into fashion, and one of them is into culture, and one of them is into home decorating. And I thought,
take my money.
So after I write the 4 books of the Slippery Slope, it's going to be the Slippery Slope spin-off series about the Fantabulous 5. So, because really, seriously, that's how my brain works. The light bulb went off. Oh my gosh, Queer Eye in the 1890s.
That's
so funny.
But it's still, it all is based off of doing this research. Okay, so what was going on? This is because I have one scene in the second Slippery Slope book, A Touch of Class, where they're at the opera. I literally spent an entire day researching what operas did the Met Opera perform in the fall of, 1890. And I learned some fascinating things. They did Carmen in Italian, not French. And so I started reading about opera in the 1890s and what was going on with the museums and because this is right before the list of the 400 went out from Mrs. Astor. Like it's just each of these different aspects. So what would somebody do to get on Mrs. Astor's list? And that's and I was watching a lot of Queer Eye at the time. And then the 2 things it was like, atoms splitting. It was, but this is where the ideas come from, and not just taking them and running, because it's like, oh, what if you did this and that? So
the research rabbit holes are amazing.
Oh my God.
I love it when that happens. But also because you have a brain that doesn't stop. Like you're writing, you're like, okay, so in the fields there are corn. But how would that? No, it's wheat. How would that wheat be harvested? What were they using at this point? Did they have a machine? I should look this up. And you look it up, and you're like, wow, there was a lot of unrest connected to the introduction of these new. There's probably a hero in that. I'll just spend 3 hours having a look. Like, it's great.
And this is why my writing and publishing schedule is actually packed almost of the way through to 2023. And it's because there's more ideas. Whenever anyone was like, how do you come up with your story ideas? I'm like, they won't stop. They just keep coming.
That is not the problem.
Yeah.
Not having enough is not the problem.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Society of Beasts a little bit, Annabelle.
Ooh,
that last
okay.
book has come out with The Servant and the Gentleman. For those who haven't picked up the series, tell us a little bit about the series and what readers are finding in that last book.
Okay, so The Society of Beasts, it's a series set in Regency England, and it focuses on sort of the lives and romantic journeys of the 3 founding members of the Society of Beasts, which is a fictional club for gay men. And the members enjoy a certain degree of protection from the law, and they also just get to spend time in the company of people that kind of understand where they're coming from, as it were, you know? And the third book, The Servant and the Gentleman, it's a very snobby but ultimately quite lovable gentleman called William Hartley, who's one of the founding members, whose kind of secret name is the Sable, because he's very sort of slinky and sarcastic. And it's with a very overworked secretary who works at the society named Josiah Balfour. And I've talked a lot about queer joy, but this series is about people dealing with trauma, basically. Like everyone is just working through their shit. Like, can I swear? Like, because that's
you certainly can.
Brilliant, because they've got so much fucking stuff going on, and like William Hartley, thanks to the events in the previous 2 books, realizes he's suffering from this very severe form of claustrophobia. Like, he can't be in confined spaces, and it's becoming a problem, you know, because people are starting to notice. And this very, you know, and Josiah comes across him one day in the grip of this, you know, agony, basically, and he manages to calm Hartley down. And Hartley sort of, you know, oh no, oh God, right, he could actually be really helpful to me, but also I'm really bad at talking to people, and also he's a servant. And they start talking, and Josiah has his own problems because a rival gay club has just sort of started encroaching on the Society of Beasts space in London. Rival clubs, Mary, you see? But this club is for working men. It's specifically not for gentlemen, not for aristocratic people. And so Josiah has to fight his, you know, growing attraction for Hartley with the very sort of painful realization that the society he's devoted his life and work to does have flaws. And those flaws, you know, may make it impossible for him to live with integrity doing the job that he does. Because, you know, I really like taking the idea that I had in my first book and thinking, there are lots of problems with that. I should explore that. That's weird. Why did I only make a club for posh people? There's all these poor people that like weren't getting the help and protection that they needed. So there's that, but also they just love the hell out of each other in the end. Like, they really do need each other. And there's lovely, like really long descriptions of cake, because I fell down a little rabbit hole researching like the dessert shops and ices and all. Like, I got this almanac of all the restaurants in Regency London and what they served.
That is such a useful book.
Isn't it? It's amazing. So it's mostly, you know, I wanted to send in a 200-page book just talking about all the different types of ice cream that they ate, but I managed to stitch together a passionate, slightly mad love story around it. And I really like it. Like, the book I wrote before, A Winter's Earl, you know how sometimes you realize stuff about books after you finish writing them? Like, it was a really hard pandemic here in Italy, like total, you were confined to your home. You couldn't exercise, you know, outdoors for the first period. You were just inside. And I was sort of tapping away thinking, yeah, this is great. Now I'm processing. It's fine. I'm working. It's all good. And the entire book is about people being trapped in a place that they cannot escape from, like isolated. And I think in this one, I definitely tried to make it a little bit lighter, a little bit sweeter, like just let them, you know, share a dinner. And it's a fake relationship as well, because to infiltrate the rival club, Hartley's like, well, it would make sense if we posed as a couple. And Josiah's like, yeah, it's not like there are loads of logistical problems with that. Sure, let's go for it. And, you know, they're talking about making up stories about how they met. It was great. It was so fun to write. Like, that's it.
Well, see, to me, that sounds like a fantastic blending of all of the tropes that queer romance readers love and all the things that historical romance readers love. You nailed it.
Oh, thank you so much. Can I put that? Just you nailed it, Mary Farmer. My book. That would be great. Just
It's the
tattoo
perfect.
it on my
It's the
wrist.
perfect cover blurb.
Yeah.
It's also a double entendre. So
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Oh, fantastic.
I'm curious to know how you think you've evolved as a writer through the writing of, whether it's like Annabelle, who's got the single series, or for Marion and Cat, you've got several series, several books, and how things have evolved. And Kat, I think you've been in this the longest so far in historicals, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll start with you on that one.
I think like it's to circle back to something I said a few minutes ago. It's like having the confidence to like believe that if I'm interested in something, I can make it interesting, and that's the like from. And that maybe that's, and that I don't have to hit the widest segment of the market. Like this is something I should probably write on a little piece of paper and put it on my bulletin board, because sometimes I'll look at like what is selling the best, right? With the limited amount of data that we all have, right? And I'll be like, oh my God, like this is so different from what I'm writing. Like, oh no, doomed, and then I remember that actually I'm doing fine. And, if you do something well that a small part of the audience likes, and you consistently do it, or like semi-consistently do it, right? Mm-hmm. Then like people will keep coming back for more. That I don't need to aim for the widest part of the market. Like that, I can just sort of, with my enthusiasm, sell the thing that's interesting to me. Like, mm-hmm. And yeah, I really should write that down, because like at least once a month, I have like a small crisis about that and need to be like talked sense into. So yeah.
When you write that down, send it to me, because I do the exact same thing. I cannot tell you. I have two writer friends in particular, and they hear this from me about once every 10 days. Like, oh my gosh, everybody's doing this better than I am. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. What can I do better? And they're like, Mary, you're doing really well. Just stop. But it's hard, isn't it? It's hard to have that confidence in yourself.
Especially when like what you're seeing, like right now, like obviously contemporary rom-com is having like a huge moment, right? Yeah. And so when you're writing something that isn't that, you're like, oh God, like, am I on the wrong boat? Like, have I done something totally wrong? And that can be like really, that can like worm its way into your brain in like a really unhelpful way, because I'm gonna write contemporary rom-com. Like it's not gonna happen. So even if I wring my hands about it all day long, I'm not gonna get anywhere, right?
Or like, me all the time. I was like, oh my gosh, that Cat Sebastian chick has another book out, and I'm sure it's so much better than mine. And like, I got to check her rankings like every 3. No, I got over that.
Yeah, mine is, I'm objectively worse than Cat Sebastian right now. But like, of course I am. She's been doing it for a decade. Like, why would you be better? No, seriously speaking, the growing and altering as an author, for me, it's the combining like becoming better at your craft with learning how the hell publishing works, and trying to keep your confidence when faced with the brute fact that like you're doing fine, but you're not doing great. Like your book could totally be turned down. Like, you're not at the top of the heap. Like, and so you think, well, should I pivot? Should I do something completely different? I don't know. Should I keep doing? What if everyone hates it? But like it does worm into your brain. I'm glad it still worms into your brain, legend of the genre, because it's quite firmly rooted in mine.
Fabulous. There you go. Like, wow. Thanks, Jeff, for putting this together.
It's like, again, so I've actually been publishing MF historical since 2009, but I've always been indie, always, because I love it. And I've turned down 3 contracts with publishers. Don't tell them. Including some ones. But I only started doing MM like seriously like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But and again, there's that whole, well, I can do whatever I want, and nobody's going to turn this down, and nobody's going to say, well, thank you, we've had enough books from you. We wish you well in your future endeavors. But then, like, you guys were talking about your agent saying maybe you shouldn't publish that. I have nobody telling me that. I'm like, those Calvin and Hobbes comics where Calvin is like running around naked, like just going crazy. That's what I do. And sometimes I publish things and I'm like, is that the best idea? but I've learned how my big thing in the last year especially is learning the queer, LGBT, all those different, that readership, because there's different little buckets out there. And I've realized, when I first started doing this, I was writing for the wrong people, if that makes sense. Like, I think I understand a little bit more what I need to do. And because there's that balance between, do I write what I want to read, or do I write for my audience?
Yeah,
and
if we could exchange emails, Mary, that would be great, because there's that whole finding your audience thing, because I don't think I found mine yet. Like, some people pick it up and they love it, others really deeply do not, and I don't know where they are.
It's difficult. And then when I started I was surprised, like Kat was saying, how many people followed me from my MF books into MM.
Right.
Deeply surprised at how many. And but I feel like I started all over again. And this fall, when I go to completely MM, it's because I have this Omegaverse series that I just cannot get this idea out of my mind. But I know full well I'm going to be starting at the very beginning again.
Yeah.
And but when you've been doing this for so long, it's kind of refreshing to start at the very beginning, because the way that publishing works these days, because it can happen so fast, particularly if you're an indie writer like me, you get bored. You got to go try different things. And I need to, but I love that. I love being able to try new things. That's why I wrote my Peter and the Wolves series, which people are probably sick of hearing me talk about, because it's so weird, but I love it so much, with my 5 readers who are rabidly devoted to it. But
that's the joy of writing, being able to explore that weird thing that you're really into. I really want to write a horror. I really want to write like a 1930s horror story. Will there be a market for it? Probably not.
No, absolutely.
Like Agatha Christie, but make it really horror. Like,
So, of course, Big Gay Fiction Fest is taking place in Pride Month. And I'd love to know what Pride means to each of you, and also how you try to manifest that in your stories, especially since it might have meant something different, or, show up differently, in the past. And Annabelle, I'll just come back to you to start that one off.
Gosh, well, this is an interesting question. I don't know really where to start by explaining it. I'll just, a lot of obsessively written notes. I went to an all-girls school. Okay, let's start with the personal. Like, I went to an all-girls school. All of my first crushes were on women. And it wasn't an environment where you couldn't talk about it. I talked about it a lot with my friends, but it was generally understood that it did not go beyond the circle of friends. Like, you could have your crushes and you could talk about them with your best friends, but talking about it as part of the school community, no, gay people did not exist. We did not talk about it. There was no reference to it in any lessons. Like, I don't recall it ever being talked about, and while my family generally accepting, at the same time, very much a no, like, not going to talk about that. And I don't really define myself as anything in terms of sexuality, but I think that who we choose to love and be attracted to, and how we are attracted to and express that love for people, it might be an unfashionable word. I do think that's sacred. I think it's a holy part of being human. And I think being able to exist as yourself and in a wider community that honors that, doesn't just accept it, but treats it as an essential and important part of who you are, I think that is what pride means to me, I guess. And going back to what I talked about before, like, there are references to shame in my books, but there is none in terms of like how they now feel about themselves and how they talk about themselves with their friends. There's, as you said, Kat, there's not a lot of like, oh, woe is me. Well, was it Mary? One of you, but like the whole kind of, this is a terrible way to be. This is a terrible way to live. Like, I don't have time for that in my own life, and I don't have time for it in my books. So I think honoring the complexity of that is what pride means to me. I don't know.
I love that. I gave me goosebumps.
Sorry
to hear that. So I love that.
That it
Mary,
is how I
about
feel.
for you?
I thought about this from the moment I saw the question, and I guess it goes back to the reason why I started writing these books in the first place, which is I've had, I don't want to say I've had a rough life, but I've had a lot of exclusion, and I've had a lot of being ostracized from my peers in my life for reasons that have nothing to do with sexuality in general. Just the community I grew up in. But it was always gay men who made me feel safe, who made me feel accepted, from my third grade teacher to who of course was not out then, and honestly I'm not sure if he's out now, to my best friend in high school, to the fact that I did theater all through school. And like this community has just always made me feel safe and appreciated and valued and visible. And I'm just like this dorky cis straight white woman who, I mean, if anything, I would be arrow, because like I'm not doing that. It's too hard. The whole relationship thing. I write about it, not doing it in real life. But I am, with this word pride, I am so proud of the people that I have known who have gone through so much and are still such amazing, wonderful people who have been willing to reach out to me. And like a couple years ago, Ruben, my best friend from high school, he and his husband, I was out to lunch with, and I'm like, Ruben, like, I really identify with the LGBTQ community, but am I allowed to do that? And he goes, Marion, on behalf of the gay community, you're allowed to identify with us. So if Ruben says so. But I owe so much gratitude and so much of my soul to people who have made me feel accepted. And this, everything that I do, everything that I write, it's just to give back. It's to give back what I was given and to pass it on.
And Kat, coming over to you.
Sure. So I'm 44. Okay. And I grew up.
Sorry. Okay, carry on.
Really good for my ego. Okay. So I grew up in like the 90s with the most supportive family that you could possibly. My godfather is gay. Okay. Like there was never like so. Anyway, my point is just that like queerness has always been like an extremely background part of my identity, right? Like it's never an issue. I never had a doubt in my mind that my parents would not care at all, like what gender of anybody that I brought home. It was just not a thing. And then I lived in New York during my early 20s, and like, and during a time when it looked like we as a community were like making progress, right? Like, like we had gotten over like the absolute worst of AIDS. Like gay marriage suddenly was on the table, right? Like this was like, and I can't even tell you how like big a shock that was to me. Like, and like that, like it really looked like like, I know progress is like not linear, right? But it really was for a while, and now it's 2022 and I live in Florida, and it is such an ugly time to be queer. Like it is for kids mainly, right? This is like just 2 days ago, there was like my horrible governor like put out an order saying that trans kids should be denied like transition support. Okay. And like, it's just like, oh, it's all this like gratuitous cruelty. And so I am reminded of the fact that like it is like being like the first Pride was a riot, right? Like this is like anger it's okay for like anger to be built into like that sense of like identity and community, because I am like utterly furious. And like that, like I said, this is like kind of new to me, because like I've always been I'm privileged about in every way that like a queer woman can possibly be.
Yeah.
And like and that kind of anger has fueled movements before this, and it's fueled that like incremental progress that I saw when I was young, and I really hope that it can fight back against some of the stuff that's happening now.
Yeah. I mean, banned books. What the fuck is going on?
And did you see that list? Some of them that were on that one from which county was it in Florida?
Like, it's always in Florida. Like, I mean, it's Texas too, but like, yes, there was a list of books in Florida, and like, it's always unclear whether they're actually banned or whether it's like,
but they don't.
Challenged.
Yeah, they don't need to be, do they? Because the word gets
true.
out, and then libraries go, "Oh well, we better remove them anyway, just to avoid it."
Nobody involved in schools is paid enough to like make fighting all day long. You know what I mean? Like their job, right? And so like, I honestly can't even blame teachers and librarians who are just like, oh God, just like, we'll take it off the shelves, whatever. We'll do Catcher in the Rye again. You know what I mean? Like, or whatever. Like it's just really grim, you know?
Yeah.
But I feel like that's the importance of what we do, because there's different ways to fight this. And one of the, you know, there's the whole, you fight it by fueling the love in the other side, and you get people to understand, like this woman who said that reading my books helped her to understand her grandson. You know, the more we can get that message of love out there, the more that we can change hearts and minds, as they say, for the future.
Obviously, I think all of our listeners and watchers today should be getting your books. But I'm curious from each of you, you know, and not including the authors who are here right now, who's somebody you would recommend for historical stories? And Mary, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm lucky because since it's June, I'm actually doing a multi-author project of a Regency series with 4 other authors. Some of them are pretty big names that you've heard before in LGBTQ romance, like Ruby Moon. And she's doing this project, and Elliot Grayson is also involved in this project, and Hannah Morse is doing it. And then one of my friends from the MF world, who is also an author of color, who has written some queer romance, Victoria Vale, she's doing one of this book. So the 4 of us, or rather the 5 of us, are doing this series, the Perdition Club, which is set around a gaming hell in the Regency. And I tried to contact you guys months ago to see if you wanted to do the project with us, but I couldn't figure out how to get to you. Anyhow,
why don't I exist?
But it's going to be an ongoing world, so we'll talk. But yeah, I've really gotten to know Ruby Moon really well. She's fantastic. Elliot is just hysterical. So, and I'm also Jackie North is a friend of mine, and this Jack and Oliver series, which is this retelling of Oliver Twist. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. So those are my recommendations.
Fantastic. A whole universe to get to pay attention to. That's awesome. Yeah. Kat, how about for you?
Sure. I always want to recommend Ali Theron, okay, because I think that she's writing in like a period that you don't see all the time, like the 1920s. She has like a really interesting magical world building, and like and it's super character driven in a way that like you really feel like you get to know the characters, which is, for me, that's always my catnap. Like you feel like you know them, like you know them through and through. And also Astrid Glenn Gray, who never gets like, okay. So like,
is she like the author's author? Like, do we all know?
Like, I mean, Brierly is like, okay, so what happened was, I was like, in 2018, I was reading all of this Captain America fanfic. And it turns out Astrid Glenn Gray had written like my favorite Captain America fanfic. Okay. And so I find that, and at this point, I'm going to buy anything that she wrote. It doesn't even matter what it is. Right. But it turns out that it's this like World War II Beauty and the Beast retelling with a dragon. Okay. And like, it's Brierly. Okay. And I mean, like, I would have read it, even if it was terrible, I would have read it, right? Okay, no, this book was like, I read it in like 2 hours, and then immediately went back to the beginning and read it again, and then yelled about it on Twitter. Like, this book is perfect. And it's like as if it's like Belle's dad, basically. You know what I mean? Like this dorky vicar or whatever. Okay. And then after that, she goes and writes this like Cold War spy thing called Honey Pot, which is so totally different, and it is equally fantastic.
I think I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. And like, yeah. So, and those are 2 totally, like, Ali Theron and Astrid Glenn Gray, like, I think are like pretty different, like pretty like writing in a pretty different mood. And yet, I would recommend both of them wholeheartedly.
Fantastic. And Annabelle, who's on your list?
KJ Charles, how could I not? Like, I have a borderline social, like parasocial relationship with this. Like, this person does not know who I am, but she is influenced, like, in not just the books, although please pick all of them up right now. Like, literally stop what you're doing, just go down, get all of them, and then come back. But her blog post about how to write consent in historicals, like, that was just like amazing craft advice. Like, you sink into the world and you don't want to come out. Like, amazing, just fantastic.
A fantastic choice, all of you, and you've added to my TBRs too, between the universe and Kat. You know, talked about an author I'm not familiar with, so good stuff to be read there. So as we wrap up, I would love to know what's coming up next for each of you. Barry, I know you talked a little bit about Omegaverse coming in your future beyond that universe that you talked about. Tell us a little bit more. Tease us, if you will.
So, you know, I'm the kind of person like, you know, I am never going to read Omegaverse Mpreg because that's just silly. So what do? I picked up the Forbidden Desire series by Piper Scott and Virginia Kelly, and that was just like, nope, game over. I read so much Omegaverse. Like last summer and last fall, it's just like so much Omegaverse. And then this idea popped into my head for what if there was an emergency support alpha service to provide single Omegas in distress with heat support when they needed it. So I have this series, Bangers and Mash, which is the name of the support service that, like this, it's very fluffy, lighthearted, funny Omegaverse of this emergency support alpha service. And the idea, it would not leave me alone. So I'm like, yeah, I guess I have to write that.
Is that going to be in a historical setting, or does this bring you more contemporary?
No, it's going to be contemporary because I just feel like, I don't know why, but Omegaverse feels like it works for contemporary. But then I kind of, you know, it could actually be historical too. And then I had a fellow author who has approached me. He's like, he has this idea. He watched Bridgerton. He's like, I got this idea for an alternative world Regency series. What do you think? And so there's been some talk of this shared world series and alternative sort of, you know, where it's all sorts of the sexual spectrum is just all accepted. So, you know, that might happen. But
okay, very cool.
I always get excited when fellow authors are like, I've got an idea. What do you think? It's like, let's do it.
Yeah.
Which I shouldn't do because this is why I'm booked up through the end of 2023.
We don't need free time or friends. It's
my full-time job, you know. I'm an introvert.
Yeah, we don't need people.
Kat, what's coming up for you?
So this month I have my second Highwayman book coming out. That's The Perfect Crimes of Marion Hayes. And that is basically like two semi-unhinged bisexuals in like 1750s London, just making a mess of their personal lives and doing crime. And I'm excited about that. And then after that, I really don't know what comes, like I will, like a Cabot book will come out and a Page and Summers will come out, but in what order and in what months, I have no idea. And that is like one of the advantages of self-publishing is that can all be a problem for future Cat, you know.
And Annabelle, now that this series is over, any ideas for what's coming next?
Right. I've got two proposals that I really like. Like, I don't know if this is talking shop too much, but you get feedback from your publishers on how books are doing. Like, and you also get feedback from readers. And what I've got is like, yeah, they're good. People like them. Your plots are a bit weird. You want to do maybe less plot, like too much plot, too kitchen sinky. And that threw me into a fucking crisis. Like, because like that's your crutch when you're starting out writing. You're like, I'll just put everything in. Things are always happening. That's, you know, that's fine. I don't need to improve. And now I'm like, yeah, no, that is a legitimate criticism. So my next proposals, they've got to be less plotty. Oh, things are happening. They like more character driven. Correct. So I've got a Regency, which is about a guy who jilted his bride at the altar because he couldn't go through with it. It's horrible to her. It's horrible to him, living a lie. He comes back to his estate and finds out that there is just no money. The house is a huge money sink. His younger sister's marriage prospects are just through the floor now, thanks to their lack of money and his generally scandalous reputation. And what does he decide to do? He falls in love with the gardener. Just great. Wrong time. The gardener is an ex-Bow Street runner who's come off to sort of spend some time in the country because he has a daughter, a woman who he had a relationship with some time back, turned up with a baby. Now he's got to take care of this kid. He has no idea how to do it. He's going on like parenting manuals from the romantic poets, like does not know how to be a dad. Really the wrong time for a relationship. And who does he fall in love with? Of course, this man with terrible life circumstances. So that nothing really needs to happen for that to be interesting, I think. Like I would, I'm enjoying writing it. The other one is based on a famous queer club in London called the Cave of the Golden Calf, I think. It was, yeah?
I think that is ringing some bells.
Good, okay. Because it's 1920s, 1930s, and as you said, Mary, the queer scene was big, like in a big, massive public way that we don't know about. And so I've got a very sort of harassed club owner who's got debts, and just because obviously he has to pay loads in protection money to the rackets running London at that time. It's got all this shit going on, and in walks this young Welsh singer who is a star, magnetic star quality. He's going to be the next big thing. Probably shouldn't get involved in a relationship with this young man, and yet. So these are my proposals. I really hope the publisher likes them. Like, if not, as a bit like Cat's Bagpipe Brain, like I've got a million other things I want to write. I want to write a Christmas book. My mum loves Hallmark Christmas movies. Can I do a gay one? Probably.
Yes, you can.
Yes. Just the ideas stage is great. The evolution and reception stage, still great, but different. Swimming around in the happy bath of the ideas state.
And if you ever want to self-publish any of those, if they turn them down, come to me. I've got all the information.
Oh God, please. I have so many boring questions.
No, I've always wanted to be like a career coach, to be like, okay, you want to get started?
Mentor? Oh, that would be great.
I love that. I live for that kind of thing. So we'll talk.
Oh, that's great.
I'll come to Italy.
Oh, yeah, again, please do. It's so great.
I'll bring the
best decision I ever made. Yes.
Mary and Annabelle and Cat, this has been so amazing. I'm so happy you joined us for the Big Gay Fiction Fest. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
This episode's transcript has been brought to you by our community on Patreon. If you'd like to read the conversation for yourself, simply head on over to the show notes page for this episode at biggayfictionpodcast.com. Don't forget, the show notes page also has links to everything that we talked about in this episode. And if you'd like to keep up to date with the show, as well as recent releases in our genre, check out the Rainbow Romance Reader Report, the weekly dispatch that delivers the latest news right into your inbox every Friday. Go to biggayfictionpodcast.com/report for more info.
Thanks again to Annabelle, Mary, and Cat for being part of Big Gay Fiction Fest. This was such an incredibly fun discussion, and I'm so glad they took the time to sit down and talk with us about this genre that Will and I really love oh so much.
All right, I think that'll do it for now. Coming up on Monday in episode 384, it's another Big Gay Fiction Fest episode, and we welcome J.R. Gray for an author spotlight.
I had such a great conversation with Gray, especially hearing how he started at a young age to make up sci-fi stories and how that led into him being a published gay romance author.
On behalf of Jeff and myself, we want to thank you so much for listening, and we hope that you'll join us again soon for more discussions about the kind of stories we all love, the big gay fiction kind. Until then, keep turning those pages and keep reading. Big Gay Fiction Podcast is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more shows you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts. Production assistance by Tyson Greenan. Original theme music by Daryl Banner.